Hi everybody, Jason from IRO Rock Off-Road. Today we're installing our new Rock-Link 3-link long arm upgrade on this 2003 Jeep Grand Cherokee. So long arm upgrade means you've already got a lift kit, you've already got the shocks, you've already got the springs, you've already got the track bar, sway bar links, everything you need to perform the lift. And long arm upgrade just converts it from short arms to long arms, or from a different brand of long arms to our long arms, whatever it is. Today we're actually taking out a critical path long arm upgrade. It's been in there for a couple of years. He loves it, it's working great. But this is the new hotness, this is the new 3-link. So it makes it a little easier for axle swaps down the road. The install is pretty straightforward, and we'll take you through it right now. Alright, we're going to throw a little anti-seize on the male threads. A little bit's all you need, it'll spread itself as you thread it in. Thread it in. I've got one here that's already done. Next step is going to be to install these little clamping bolts. Okay, we've got our control arms fully built. All our flex ends are assembled, our male ends are threaded in. Now we're going to adjust the length. Our length is specified in the instructions as a center to center length. Now to do that, you're going to want this pivot point to be parallel to this one. So you're going to have to twist your flex end until it's aligned with this one. Now these flex ends, when you move them, are supposed to move freely, but they should be nice and tight. An easier way to do this, center to center, is also the same as right edge to right edge, left edge to left edge, because they're the same diameter. So we're just going to measure from the right edge to the right edge, and this one's right on the money. Okay, this tube's got our existing Iron Y critical path long arm system. So it's a radius arm design with a lower control arm that connects to the lower control arm mount as well as the upper control arm mount, and ties everything together into a nice radius arm. Keeping it all together eliminates any twist. A lot of the other long arm systems you'll see have two individual upper control arms, which under load will cause this lower control arm to twist back and forth, causing a little bit of looseness in your steering and your suspension. This is a great system. Everything works great on it. We're just swapping it out for the 3-link because it's the latest and greatest. Okay, so here we've laid out our kit. You've got your subframe outers. These hold the lower control arms. This one's got a mount for the upper control arm. So it goes this way. The subframe center section, high clearance, heavy duty, very strong. Whole bunch of hardware, all new bolts for all the control arms. Lower control arms, They have a bend in them for tire clearance. We use Cleveite rubber bushings. These are the strongest, longest lasting bushings we have found. Very heavy duty. We like the compressed rubber style versus the vulcanized, molded in place style, because you've just got more rubber and it's compressed, so it's got a little more tension to it. Upper control arm, flex ends, Iron Rock flex ends on one end of each control arm, rubber bushing on the other. That keeps your road noise and your vibrations down. All our flex ends are rebuildable using conventional tools, no special tools needed. Replaceable plastic races in them, though they last virtually forever as is. Okay, and next we're going to install our lower control arm mounts. These two holes are not there from the factory, so we're going to have to drill those. We're going to insert nut plates up into the frame and fish them over above the two holes and bolt it in. So first we're going to bolt this in temporarily to drill our holes. We're using M10 by 30 bolts and M10 by 80 bolts. I'm just going to snug them up just a little bit. And drill our holes. I'm going to pull this thing back down. You're going to use a countersink bit or a deburring tool if you have one, just to clean up the burrs on the hole, just the leftover sharp edges from drilling. We're going to clean it up. I'm going to spray a little paint on there just so there's no exposed metal. And we are going to fish a nut plate in through this hole. It's a little bit of a tight fit. Drop it in the hole. Piece of baling wire works nice to push it around. One side you should be able to reach with your finger. And just be patient. This takes a little time. Can be a little frustrating. Just take your time. Get into position. Once you have one side over the hole, you can put a bolt in it. Now with the bolt, you can lift up the other side, position the other side over the hole. You can use your baling wire to hold that while you take out your bolt. Just center them up nice and perfect above your holes. Bolt this thing back in, this time for real. Now this one, you just be very careful not to move that nut plate while you're getting your bolt started. Of course, I just moved my nut plate. Oh, there it is. I'm actually going to leave these two bolts out for now, because when we bolt in our center section, it bolts into these 4 holes here. Snug these up and we'll torque them to spec later. Next, we're installing our driver's side control arm mount. Got your lower control arm mount, your upper control arm mount. We've already held it up into place and drilled our 2 holes into the frame, cleaned it up, painted the frame. This one does interfere with this fuel line a little bit. This fuel line isn't present on all Jeeps, but it is on some of them. So we're just going to push that up out of the way. If you get your jack stand or your jack or whatever you're using positioned right in the corner of this guy, you should be able to fit everything you need. Don't go too far, just push it up out of the way. We've also installed some rubber edging. It's included with the kit to prevent any chafing. None of these parts move, so chafing isn't really an issue, but it's just there as a precaution. Got some M10 by 30 bolts, M10 by 80 bolts with washers on them, and some 7/16 bolts for going into the nut plate. And we're not going to torque them to spec yet. I'm going to take these center ones back out. Those are also the bolts that will hold in our center section of the cross member. Okay, now when you install this control arm mount, it's going to push this fuel line up out of the way just a little bit. So before you do that, there's one of these Christmas tree clips right here and one right here that need to be removed. And then you're ready to put this in. Next, we're installing our subframe center section. So I've got 17mm socket, little extension, M10 by 30 bolts. I'm going to run this into every hole just to make sure that everything's lined up. There's no debris in the thread. Just to make sure everything's ready to go. Just snug these up a little bit now. We'll torque them to spec later. Okay, and we're reusing the original transmission mount bolt. It comes from the driver's side over to the passenger side. Shove it in there, put the nut on it, and now we can set our transfer case and transmission back down onto the mount, and one less stand to work around. All right, next we're going to install our upper control arm. We've already adjusted it to length. It's fully assembled, ready to go. For this, we're going to use the shortest of the 14mm bolts, 14 by 95. The flange nut on the back. All right, a good way to put this flange nut in is to use your open end wrench, put it in there, kind of hold it tight against the mount, and then just put your bolt into it. Give it a little spin to get it started. Okay, for the front, we're using an M10 by 80 bolt flange nut. It's going to take a little bit of wrestling to get this one in there. All right, next up is our passenger side lower control arm. We're doing the passenger side first because we've got the upper control arm in on the driver's side, so it's just a little bit easier to wrestle it into position. So take a look at the clamping bolts. Those should hang down when it's installed. The big bend is for tire clearance while turning. So the arm goes in this way with the clamping bolts hanging down. For this, we're going to use our 120mm bolt. That's the longest of the M14 bolts. And 2 of these control arm spacers to make up the space in this lower mounting bracket. I'm going to put them on the outside to push the control arm away from the tire. So first I'm going to put the bolt in and just get it started with the 2 control arm spacers just to hold that in place. We're going to start on the axle side because it makes things a little bit easier. And then we're going to move on to the frame side. And I want to align this flex end to the mounting hole. On the upper side, we're going to use an M14 by 100 bolt from the outside in with the washer on it. Flange nuts on both of them, and we'll torque them down later. All right, next up is our driver's side lower control arm. One thing I didn't mention when we were doing the passenger side is the angle of this control arm. I think I mentioned this when we were setting up the control arms, but this angle should make it closer to parallel with the angle on the opposite side. So if you rotate this thing 180 degrees off, it's going to be angled the wrong way. So just make sure you get it the right way, and when you install it, you'll be able to see that it's either aligned or it isn't. All right, I've got my control arm spacers in place already. I Axle side first. Again, it's going to take just a little bit of wrestling to get it into place. We did use a jack stand under the pinion to push it up, get it closer to position. Flange nut on each of them, and we're ready to go. All right, next up we're going to torque our control arms to spec. The lower control arm bolts and the large upper control arm bolt at the chassis are all torqued to 135 foot-pounds. Now, since the vehicle's on the hoist, we can do the flex ends now, but the rubber bushings at the axle side, they're going to have to wait until the vehicle's on the ground at exact ride height. All right, our install's all finished up. Now here's a little shot. We're flexing out on a rock in front of the building. Just check out the ground clearance. The whole cross member hangs down less than 3 inches. In contrast, the factory cross member hangs down about 3 3/4. So this whole entire kit, including the long arms themselves, fit well above the stock cross member. Through the middle of the cross member, you gain about 1 3/4 inches of ground clearance. This whole kit is designed for high ground clearance, the ultimate in flex and the ultimate in drivability. On the road, this thing functions great, drives down the highway 70 miles an hour, just drives amazing. Fully adjustable caster, easy axle swaps. This kit is just ready to go. Now this here is one of our favorite tests to do. Test the flex. This is a great way to look for brake line lengths, ABS wires, any kind of interference. Great way to check how much fender trimming you need. This is just a fun test to do. Well, that wraps up our installation. Next stop, Iron Rock Off-Road's customer appreciation event for some serious rock crawling.